physical age as well, so I could remember dialogue, and I wasn't intimidated by the surroundings and all the stuff going on and the adults. So when you can take on dialogue and you're mentally older than you look, and it works out really well. So I was looking 8 or 9, acting 18 or 19, and that's kind of how I kept working, but it was always a temporary job. I never looked at it as a long career.
Well, you did have a lot of credits in your career, and you've worked with a lot of people. Now, what would you consider to be your big break, and who were you working with in that when you consider your big break? Like, who were the famous first stars you worked with?
Well, the big break came doing the Two Little Bears was the name of that movie, and the cast, as I said, was Eddie Albert and Jay Ryan, but we also had Soupy Sales, was the comic relief cop. We had Miss Hathaway, Nancy Colt from the Beverly Hillbillies. We had Brenda Lee, 15 years old at the time. She was America's singing sensation. So we had a really good little B-movie cast, and during that 6 weeks of work, I picked up General Hospital, and I also picked up a Kellogg's Cornflakes commercial. So for someone that had never acted, by the time the movie was over, I actually had a few credits going, and then I wound up going over to the Real McCoys and did the last year of the Real McCoys, did the first half a year in General Hospital, and then a lot of guest starring roles before the Munsters came about.
Now, I heard you worked with Judy Garland at some point.
Who? Judy Garland?
Judy Garland, is that correct?
Yeah, there was a movie called A Child Is Waiting, and it was starring Burt Lancaster and Judy Garland. Now, I was impressed with Burt Lancaster because he was like Superman's man and a very, very cool guy. But Judy Garland, after I did the movie, I was more impressed as an adult with her because I always just thought it was, Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz. But she was actually, the more I got to know her, what a huge star she was. Her and Mickey Rooney in the 40s were doing major stuff in Hollywood. It was kind of a rough go for him over at MGM, but she was a big star. And yeah, I was very happy to have, I spent more time with her, but I did meet her occasionally.
Yeah, but there's a lot of us out here who are a little jealous that Butch got to work with Judy Garland, am I right? Is any Judy Garland fans out there?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thanks. Can you now tell us how you got the role of Eddie Munster on the Munsters?
Sure. The Munsters, I was actually living in Illinois, a little town called Geneseo with my grandmother. She was a big antiquer, so she had moved back to Illinois. And my stepdad and my mom had moved to Washington, D.C. because he was a baseball player that had gotten traded to the Washington Senators from the Los Angeles Angels. So I'm in Illinois, and they cast the Munsters, and it goes in front of the networks to be approved. And they looked at the pilot, and they said, we want to go forward with this, but we want to change out the mom and the kid. So they had Joan Marshall was playing the mom with a character named Phoebe, and they had a kid named Happy Durman as Eddie. So they said, recast those two, and we'll move forward. So my agent caught wind of that and approached them and said, I've got the perfect kid for you. And we've looked at every kid in Hollywood, and she said, that's the whole problem. He's not in Hollywood right now. He's in Illinois with his grandmother. They flew me out. I was picked up at the airport by my Uncle Woody, and I went directly to the CBS Studio Center where I screen tested. Didn't even go on an interview, went directly in front of the camera, which is kind of unusual, very unusual, with Yvonne DiCarlo. And they said, that's it, report to work, don't go home, make arrangements to live with somebody because I had no one there. So I moved in with my Uncle Woody and hired a woman to take me to work for the next 2 years.
So it was just you and that other boy who was up for it? Because I wanted to know, were there any other young actors of the time who were, maybe even any other actors who are in the room today who were up for the role?
By the time they got to me, they had already gone through the whole casting process of a couple hundred kids and wound up with Happy Durman. Then the network stepped in and said, no, we want to go forward, but we need to change out the kid. But at that time, that's why they said we looked at every kid in Hollywood over the casting process. And I just happened to be lucky enough to have a good agent. And like I say, I was very small. They liked the idea that Herman was very tall. And the Eddie-Herman relationship was born.
And how old were you at that point?
I was 10, but I turned 11 right as we started work.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any memories of the first time you met each of the actors that you were working with?
Well, it was interesting because being a fan of Universal Monsters, it was fun to see the offshoot of the monsters that I grew up watching, and then the producers of Leave It to Beaver putting together scripts featuring a friendly family of monsters. It was very weird, but I love the set. I loved everybody. They were very kind. They were very kid-friendly. They all had kids about my age. Luckily, I was pretty good and adept at handling dialogue, so I didn't make a lot of mistakes. So whenever you don't make many mistakes, it helps in Hollywood to not be the cause of a lot of retakes. And we all started getting along, and the show was successful. But I remember how tall Fred was, and how out of control Grandpa was, and how beautiful Marilyn was. I had a huge crush on Beverly Owen, big one.
Okay, now was there, well, now that you said that, was there anybody in the cast you were particularly close with over those seasons you worked on the Munsters?
Who did what?
Was there anyone you were particularly close with, either on set or off set?
Yeah, well, I learned a lot of acting techniques from Fred when we did our father and son stuff, but he was so busy that he didn't really have a lot of free time. So most of the time that I spent with him was just during our scenes or on Monday or Tuesday when we were working and reading and doing rehearsals. But Al Lewis was the gentleman that spent some time with me and tossed a baseball or a frisbee and, you know, kind of put me under his wing a little bit. So I would say Grandpa and I had the most closest relationship outside of the show.
Okay. Now, we know you wore a lot of makeup on the show.
Yeah.
And can you tell us about how long you had to sit in the makeup chair on a day you were filming?
You know, what's interesting about makeup too is it was about an hour for me and a couple hours for Herman and Fred. But Mike Westmore, if anybody is familiar with makeup people, Mike Westmore did all the makeup for Star Trek: The Next Generation. He won an Oscar for Mask, and he did Raging Bull. But when I got the role of the Munsters, Mike was an apprentice still. He wasn't even a full-on acting. He wasn't a full-on makeup man yet. And he was my first guy, and I was his first ward at Universal under his uncle Bud Westmore. So that was pretty cool that me and Mike got to know each other for 2 years, and he went on to become like one of the best makeup men in the planet. So my makeup man.
Yeah. Now the makeup. Now you know the show was in black and white, and
Yes.
it was in the '60s. But I was wondering. Did they do the makeup in full color each time, or did they do it just in black and white?
We had a couple issues with the early makeup being pan. They're called grease paint, and it would crack under the hot lights. Then Max Factor came up with a pliable pan stick that was kind of a gray. We were highlighted with, like, Lily would have green eyeshadow, and Fred would have like blue and green highlights on his face. And we were done much more colorful than you saw, but that was really for the magazines and the press and the media that was coming out to the set to take pictures for, you know, like Life magazine or Look magazine. So even though we were in black and white, we were preparing to go color a year or so before the rest of the network actually did.
Interesting, thanks. So now, unlike our Brady Bunch friends over here, you were the only child on that set, whereas the Bradys, there were, you know, a total of 6 of them. What was it like being the only child on a set of all adults?
Well, I was good with adults. I didn't really felt I wasn't missing out on much, but I really enjoyed when we would have guest stars. We had Bill Mooney came over and did one, and actually Bill Mooney was the first choice to be Eddie Munster, and he turned it down because he was doing so much work. He thought that tying onto a series at that time and the makeup wasn't such a good idea. And then they went to casting Happy Durden. But we had Peter Robbins visited. I was really excited about him, and he was the voice of Charlie Brown. We had a lot of the kids that you have seen on Leave It to Beaver. They were because of Colleen and Mosier producing both shows. And the Beaver had a lot of kids come on. So occasionally we would catch some of those. And we had 4 or 5 episodes that featured a lot of children.
Okay, so that must have been more fun. Anyone out here know Bill Mooney or where he's from? By show of hands, anyone know Bill Mooney? Where's he from?
Lost in Space.
Lost in Space, that's correct. Will Robinson, one of my childhood idols. One of my other childhood idols is sitting right here in this room. That's Mike Lookaland, Bobby Brady. Yep, I always wanted to be Bobby because he was a dreamer. And I thought, you know, I was always dreaming too. But yeah, Bill Mooney's a great guy. Now, being a kid, did you ever go exploring the set? Like maybe where you weren't supposed to? And
Oh, yeah, I mean, that was half the fun of getting, sneaking away from the welfare worker that was supposed to be watching. watching you. And the neat, see, a lot of people ask me what's my favorite memory of the Munsters. Well, my book is called Munster Memories, and those are all memories that people share about the show. But my favorite memory when it went to print wasn't about me being on the show, because that was my job, and I did have fun. But when I had a couple hours to kill, imagine being a 12-year-old kid and being able to just go anywhere at Universal Studios, anywhere, anytime, and go explore. And I did a lot of that. So at that time, we still had Stage 28, which was the Phantom of the Opera soundstage. It was the largest soundstage in Hollywood, about 7 stories tall. It was huge. And I used to sneak up the catwalks and get up, get up the ladder to the catwalks and go all over that soundstage, which was supposed to be haunted as well. But those are the type of things that I would do. And my Uncle Jack would be up in the Virginian or Wagon Train or Laredo with horses, or I'd go out to see Ernie Borgnine and Tim Conway at the Lagoon for McHale's Navy. I had a wonderful 3-year run on the show. It went by way fast, but I had a really, really great time. And Universal Studios was my own private backyard to go explore.
Did you get to see how Spock the Dragon was operated?
Oh, of course, yeah.
Are you able to tell us?
It was just a head and a tail from a dinosaur from the Forbidden World or the Lost World from the early 50s at Universal that they repurposed into a head hanging under the stairs on wires with gas mains and a hinged jaw and a couple grips back there pulling and bouncing it. It was pretty unglamorous, but the effect was good.
Okay, now I've been meaning to ask about the Maryland Switch. And I want to know your feelings about the Maryland Switch, but now you've told me that you had a crush on Beverly Owens, so now maybe you could expand on how you felt about this switch.
Here's the interesting thing about the Maryland Switch. It was done so well that a lot of people really didn't even know there were 2 Marylands for the longest time, where if you were a Bewitched fan and you were watching Dick York and you tune on the next day and it's Dick Sargent, you go, hey, what happened to Darren? That's not my guy. Where Marilyn was a pretty seamless transition after the 13th episode. The problem with Beverly Owens, she was a wonderful person and everybody loved her, but she went out to do a pilot, The Munsters, which was supposed to fail. Her agent promised her, just go do it for the week paycheck, you'll be home in 2 weeks. And the show became a hit. She was in love and she was homesick, so basically Fred Gwynn and Al Lewis went into the producers and threatened them physically that if they don't let her go home because she was so miserable, that they would quit and then they wouldn't have a show. And they were very good friends with Beverly, and they relented. They caved in, the producers, and hired Pat Priest, and the rest is history. And Pat went home. She didn't get happily married. She went home to her sweetheart, and he created Sesame Street, which was pretty cool, I think.
Oh, wow. And I guess the whole cast was pretty welcoming to Pat Priest when she came in.
I love Pat. Yeah, Pat was wonderful.
Oh, nice. Now, do you have a favorite episode or a favorite guest star?
Oh gosh, there's really a lot of good ones. Come Back a Little Boogie with Bill Mooney was one of my favorites. Zombo, where Louis Nye plays a horror host that I win a contest to go to the studio, and I'm very disappointed and disenchanted when I see that he's not a real guy. Eddie's nickname, where I grew a beard, I think it's a very funny episode because Dr. Dudley Paul Lynde was hilarious in that episode. And then being a car guy with the Munster coach, that episode of Hot Rod Herman where we lose the car at the drag strip and Grandpa builds the now legendary Dragula to win the car back is one of my favorites. There's a lot of good ones, but those come to mind.
There really are a lot of good episodes from 2 seasons, really. Now, I know you had schooling on the set, correct?
No, school?
No.
What school?
School?
Yeah, 3 hours a day, rain or shine, no matter what.
Right. Now, when you weren't doing that, did you go to public school?
Not on the set, though.
No. I mean, like when you weren't filming, did you go to public school or private school?
Yeah, I tried to maintain. I really wanted to be a regular kid. I mean, I was a regular kid. I just happened to be going to work in the studios every couple of years, like doing the series, and then I'd be back in the public school. So I left in the 5th grade. I returned in the 7th grade, and things of that nature. But it was tough, sometimes because I was real small. And I went to a junior high school when I came back after the Munsters. My junior high school had 3,600 students in it. It's a huge school. And kids can be a little mean, so I weathered the storm. I wanted to go to public school. I stayed in the public school system until I turned 16, where I left the country for a movie, and the Gardena High School wouldn't allow me to leave for 3 months and keep me in the same grade. So that's when I had to enroll into Hollywood Professional Academy, which catered to kids in the industry, and it allowed me to stay in the 10th and 11th grade.
Yeah, I know it's tough sometimes for, child, I have friends who are child actors. It's not always easy going to public schools. I've heard a lot of stories.
Yeah.
But now, how did you find out that the show was being canceled, and how did you feel about it?
Oh, it didn't bother me. It was time to go. It had been 2 years. The ratings weren't as high as they were the first year. They were talking about going color. Batman had come on the air and pretty much kicked our butts in the ratings. And Fred and Al were ready to go home, I believe. They were New Yorkers who had been transplanted out. I didn't have a problem with it whatsoever. But what was interesting at the end of the show, when they decided to do a series, a feature called Munsters Go Home in color. And in Hollywood, very, very, very rarely do you ever, in fact, I had never, ever actually filmed the last scene of a movie on the last day, at the end of the day. It's never worked out that way. But when we did Munsters Go Home, after a 6-week shoot, the final scene at about 10 o'clock at night was us leaving Munsters Hall and driving away into the night. And it turned out to be that was the last time we would ever be together in the series in makeup as a family. It was very surreal. It was like, this is pretty weird. Here I am, a 13-year-old kid by the time we did this. And as we drove away and we got out of the car, it was like late at night, everybody just went their own way, and that was the end of an era.
Yeah. Now, in addition to the Munsters, Butch appeared on a lot of shows at the time, like Ben Casey. Butch mentioned The Real McCoys, Mr. Ed, The Untouchables, Gunsmoke, I Dream of Jeannie, The Monkees.
Did 9 episodes of My Three Sons.
I'm gonna get to My Three Sons. You did Lidsville. Now, do you have a favorite genre of all these? Like the monster type stuff, sitcom, fantasy?
I enjoy doing comedy, but I played a good mean kid. Like I Dream of Jeannie. I got to play Dr. Bellows' nephew who wanted to join the mafia. The westerns I enjoyed because I could ride a horse and you got to be outdoors and wear boots and Levi's and get dirty. But probably my favorite episode of all I ever did was the Monkees Christmas episode, because at the age of 14 years old, I missed meeting the Beatles when they came on the Munsters set, so I was very bummed that I didn't meet the Beatles. And then at that time, 2 years later, the Monkees were as big in America, if not bigger than the Beatles, because on the TV show Factor. And I remember when I got that part, I told everybody, and I never told anybody in school what I was doing, but I told everybody that I was going to be working with the Monkees for a week. I was very proud of that. And the episode, to me, is one of their best episodes, so that was cool. And then I also was lucky enough to work with Chuck Jones, the animator, on a little movie he did, his only feature film called The Phantom Tollbooth. I've actually signed a few things today of people that brought Phantom Tollbooth books in, and that's another one of my highlights.
Thanks. Now you did I Dream of Jeannie, which is, any fans of I Dream of Jeannie out here?
Yeah, Barbara Eden.
Yeah, she's great. And I would like to know, what was it like to work with Larry Hagman? Was he more J.R. Ewing, or was he more Tony Nelson?
Who?
Larry Hagman.
Oh, Larry Hagman.
Was he more J.R. Ewing or Tony Nelson?
He was more Major Nelson.
Fun guy?
Yeah, he was funny. I liked him a lot.
Yeah, I heard he's a real prankster.
He's a good actor. He's a good actor. It's amazing some guy that was so funny and nice could be such an idiot on Dallas.
So then a few years later, you're falling into this big hat, and you're in the crazy world of Sid and Marty Krofft in Lidsville. How did that come about?
Summer of '71. I just graduated high school. A movie that I did in Brazil didn't see the light of day due to a Hollywood divorce between Rhonda Fleming and Paul Bartlett. I was supposed to be nominated for an Academy Award. I'm looking at the billboard on Sunset, 1971. Oh, life's gonna be great. I'm gonna be a movie star. Doesn't happen. 2 months later, I get a call from Marty Krofft asking me to come down and see if they want to do this Saturday morning series. I say no, thank you, good luck. I go back to school, and the Councils of all people, Susan's council, John Council, Mary, and Paul I went to high school with, they said, you never turned down work in Hollywood, what's wrong with you? I go, yeah, but it's a kid's show. They go, all your friends will be asleep at 10 o'clock in the morning on Saturday. Who's ever going to see it? So I agreed to do it. And the funny part about it was, if you're familiar with Croc Productions, I'm sitting there talking to Sid Marty, and I noticed a picture of Caroline Ellis from the Bugaloos on the wall. And I go, is she going to be around? They go, oh yeah, she's going to be around all the time. She lives in England. He lied to me. So I signed on thinking I was going to be Caroline Ellis. I never did. Charles Nelson Riley and Billy Hayes were my co-stars, and it was a great 11 weeks.
Wait, did you ever meet Carolyn Ellis?
Never met her.
She's still cute.
I know that.
I looked her up on Facebook.
I know. She did a Zoom call. We had the first ever CroftCon a couple years ago up in San Francisco, and we had her do a Zoom from, I think she's in Portugal.
Now, you mentioned Billy Hayes. Now, did any of you watch HR Puffin stuff? Witchy Poo? I mean, this lady scared the Jesus out of me when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And now, you know, she's fabulous. She was Weenie the Genie on Lidsville. And what was she like to work with?
Billy was amazing. She was just the nicest person, very talented, and the fact that she'd done Witchy Poo, she knew the crops. She knew how it worked. She knew what they were looking for, and she was very, very helpful to me because she was my sidekick. I mean, she was my alliance. We had an alliance together against Hoodoo and Raunchy Rabbit, who was Sharon Baird and the Mouseketeers. So between Sharon and Billy Hayes, they took me under their wing and kind of showed me the ropes. And it was a very successful show. And it was a fun 11 weeks, and it was to be honest with you, it was the best payday I ever had in my life because the show was on for 4 years, and I only did it for 11 weeks, but I had 4 years of paychecks coming in.
That's awesome.
So that worked out really well. A lot of Corvettes got bought on that show.
Nice. Do you still have any of them? You still have any of those Corvettes?
No, I don't have. I have a Munster coach, I have a Dracula, got some trucks, got a hearse, a few other toys, a chopper, but no muscle cars from the 60s. I wish I would have kept my own car.
I wish I
Who
would.
doesn't? Everybody's got those stories.
If you kept the Corvette, we'd be going out for a ride.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well, now, there's this little cartoon show that's been on for like, I don't know, over 30 years now, 35 years. Anybody know what show that is? It started on the Tracy Ullman Show.
Simpsons.
The Simpsons. Now, not too many people get a character on The Simpsons, but you know who did? Butch Patrick. How did that come about?
Season 11, they reached out to me, and it was funny because in 1990, I remember they were in the 3rd season, I said to myself, I would really like to be a guest voice on that show, because thinking that whenever they wrapped the show, all the voices would get together for the rap party, and they had McCartney and George Harrison, and they had all these rock stars and stuff. Now, here we are 36 years later, the show's never wrapped. All the people that are on, all my guest star people that I would want to see are dead. So here we have a show 36 years, who would have ever thought? But they reached out to me, and they had a funny episode in mind, and it was called Ain't Misbehavin'. I was there with Gary Marshall as Mr. Kid Kill, and Apu's wife has octuplets, and they want to put the kids in Hollywood, and they asked me for my opinion, and that's the premise of me being on the show.
I think it's really cool. I actually have 2 friends who've been characters on The Simpsons now. The other one is Fake Jen from the Brady Variety Show, Jerry Rochelle. Now, she didn't do the voice, but you did the voice of the Butch character.
Yeah, I did my own voice. I'm flying out to do it. I'm thinking, oh great, I'm going to meet all the people. It's not how it works. I walked in, there's 17 microphones, and I'm the only person at the mic. So I go out there and I do my little bit, and I fly home the next day. Never did meet any of the voices, but they gave me a really nice jacket that I really liked.
That's really cool. Now, my kids are in the audience today, and my son Craig out there is a big horror fan.
Yeah.
Do we have any fans of scary movies here?
Of course.
Yeah, now, of course. Now, what about drive-in movies?
Drive-in?
Who remembers the drive-ins?
Yeah.
I used to love the drive-ins. Now, the Munsters are known as the first family of fright. And Butch has, I don't know if you guys ever heard of the summer Scream series, but Butch is going to tell us about a project that he's working on called the Summer Scream series that combines the Munsters and drive-in movies. So can you tell us about that?
Yeah, As I said before, I love Americana. I love road trips. I was growing up in the 50s and 60s. We frequented drive-ins quite often. So I like coming up with ideas that haven't been done before. And last year I decided that it would be interesting to work with drive-in owners association, because I know there's only 400 drive-ins left in the country. Out of the heyday when they had 4,300, so like less than 1 in 10 still exist. And I designed a tour that I'm going to start this summer. It's called the Summer Screen Series, and I'm going across the country from around the whole country, Pennsylvania through the Mississippi, which will be Indiana, Ohio, Illinois, up to Michigan, over to Wisconsin, and down to Missouri and Iowa. Not in that order, but it's I'm working with them to do midweek screenings when they're normally closed. And we have a Munster Monday, and a Thriller Tuesday, a Way Back Wednesday, and a Throwback Thursday. So we'll be doing screenings, and I'm actually filming a segment of it's a thriller slasher series where at each stop we film a murder as part of our slasher series, and we utilize the people in the area to be in the movie. And I tell people, if you ever thought about being in a horror movie, now's your chance to dive in at the drive-in and come out. I have my Munster coach on display, my Dracula on display, we do a car show. And we show Munster Go Home, and then we do an indie movie after it. So we show a horror movie, Munster Go Home, and the idea is to show these wonderful properties and these wonderful people that own these properties how to maximize their profits on midweek nights when they're normally not even open. So I'm very excited about it.
Well, that sounds great, because I would love to do that. Is there a place, I don't know if I mentioned it, is there a place that people could find that information?
Yeah, it's very hard to remember. You just get a pen and paper. Munsters.com.
You all got that?
That's a hard one.
What was that?
Munsters.com.
Okay, awesome. Now, do we have any questions for Butch from the audience? Because I can come on out there. Oh, you oh, thank you. Perfect. We're going to take some questions from the audience.
So you mentioned you were Milo in the toll booth. What was your favorite part of being in that movie?
The best part of the Phantom Toll Booth was basically, I was a fan of all the Warner Brothers and Merry Melodies and all those kinds of things. Now here I am with Chuck Jones, who's not only an animator, but plus, of course, you know, the Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote. But I'm in the booth, speaking, doing voiceover work, looking at the guy that did all the voices that I knew from my cartoons. Here I am with Mel Blanc. Here I am with June Foray. Here I am with Dawes Butler, Hans Connery. The A-listers of the entire voiceover world came out to work for Chuck Jones in this movie. And I was lucky enough to be there firsthand. And there was about 4 different sessions in a 2-year period. We had to do voiceover work as the movie progressed. We would do like about 15 minutes and then voiceover work, then another 15 minutes. So anyway, working with them was probably a highlight of my career because they were so talented.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions from the audience? We would love to hear your questions.
Hey Butch, were you close with Al Lewis after the show, and did you ever visit his restaurant in Greenwich Village?
Yeah, it was funny how I actually got to meet Al after the show, because when the show's over, everybody pretty much goes their own way. You know, you're close for a very short period of time, and then it's over. It's, you know, a temporary job. But when you're a kid, you don't really have a lot in common with anybody other than going to work with them. But about 20 years after the show was over, about 17 years after the show was over, they did a show called The Munsters Revenge, a reboot of the movie. And a friend of mine in Culver City said, hey, they're shooting the Munsters across the street. I'm like 29 years old now, 28 years old. I said, oh, come on. And he goes, I'm telling you, permanent grandpa across the street. So I drove out there, and sure enough, there they were, and I just kind of walked up to the set and acted like I knew what I was doing. And right out the corner, I said, hey, you know, and Fred was sitting next to me. He goes, with his eyes closed, he heard my voice, and he goes, hello, Butch. And that's how we rekindled our friendship. And then Al and I started doing appearances before he opened his restaurant, and then he opened the restaurant, and the rest is history.
Thank you. Other questions for Butch Patrick? Up here. Okay, we have one there, and then we'll have one up in the front.
Yes. What advice would you have for aspiring actors?
You know, I have I think I have some good advice because I used to teach a how to get into show business the right way workshop for a woman who was a casting director and actress in Cleveland. And a lot of people would spend their money and they would be hustled out of their dough, and they would go someplace and they would take their money and they would never receive a phone call back. So we were trying to explain to people how the business works. And my advice to people was this: even if you're the best actor, you know, even if you're really, really good, there's no guarantees you're going to be successful. It's just doesn't work that way. So what I tell people is, for me, had I known what I know now, I would have probably become a location scout or done something other in the business, because I didn't care about acting or not. I just enjoyed being around the process. So I told people, if you really want to be in the business, here's what I would recommend. All those names that go down the road at the end of a movie, all those people there are in the business. They're doing something that they get a paycheck, they get benefits, and they're around the movie business. A lot of times you'll get an acting job simply from being in a studio where they make movies, not so much as an actor going on an interview. So I tell people, if you don't have to be an actor, you know, you have a better chance of doing this. But if you still need to be an actor, just look at it as a hobby, and do it for the love of it, and don't expect a paycheck, and you probably, you know, may wind up actually getting a career out of it. But it's very, very hard to guarantee that. It's like being a ball player. You like playing Little League, but you never make it to the pros. So you still go to community theater and go to acting, but don't look at it as a career, because the chances are it won't happen.
Thanks. Up in the front.
Do you have like any cast parties? Like
What's that?
Like how many parties, like when the episodes air or when it's up air on TV?
Yes, I'm sorry, it's hard to hear.
Did you have like people over when you were like the show aired on TV and have like a party air?
Did you have any parties
Yeah.
with cast members?
Yeah. No, like when it aired on TV, like the episodes aired like new on TV. Like,
Yeah, if you just keep the microphone real close to your mouth.
when you had like, if you had like friends and family over and you all gathered around and watched the episodes.
Oh, did you have like watch parties at your
Yeah.
house with friends and family when the episodes were airing?
What?
When the episodes were actually airing, like in the 60s, did you have any watch parties at your house with friends and family?
No, we didn't, but you know, no.
Did you watch the show?
Yeah, you know, I would watch it. I didn't really watch a lot of it, but occasionally I would watch a show. We watched when it first came on the air, and it like it premiered.
So you didn't sit down each week and watch the Munsters?
No.
Yeah, no, some people don't watch their own shows.
No.
Some people don't like to see themselves on screen. I don't like to see myself on screen, but some people do. I think Susan was saying she was the only one of the Bradys who watched the Brady Bunch and knows the episodes. Like some of us watched each episode over and over and over again. I think she did, but a lot of people don't like to watch themselves on screen. No, thank you. We have another question right here.
Hi, Butch. I'm Michelle.
Hi, Michelle.
When you made the Whatever Happened to Eddie video, what can you tell us about that time and about that big wave of MTV fandom you got out of that? They played that a lot.
Yeah, well, there's, okay. In two part. Number one, Whatever Happened to Eddie, that happened in 1981, 82. MTV had just come on the air. But prior to that, right after Lidsville, Metro Media Records had let Bobby Sherman go. This is back in the teeny bop, 16 magazine days when we were all, the Bradys were on the cover, I was on the cover, David Cassidy, Donny Osmond, whatever. So I had a record deal back then, even though I could not sing. The people said, don't worry about it, we got this band called Sugarloaf, and they'll be your studio band, and we'll go out on the road, and we'll lip sing everything. So I went out American Bandstand, and I lip synced, and I was like the lieutenant or Loggins in Messina. I had no talent. I was an actor. I wasn't a singer. So it was fun to be in the record business. So when MTV came on the air, I wanted to be a VJ. That's what I wanted.
The ultimate job, right?
I wanted to be a VJ. I thought that was a cool job. So I figured, how am I going to get MTV's attention? So I had the lyrics I wrote to Whatever Happened to Eddie, which was the Munsters theme, updated with lyrics. So we got on MTV with that video. We were the first unsigned act ever to be on MTV, which was a huge thing back then because it was all about payola and the pay to play. And from that video, they created the basement tapes, and a lot of bands that had really good music and had a video, but they didn't have a record deal, got exposure from us breaking the glass ceiling for unsigned acts. So that is probably the best thing I ever did. But I like to tell myself, since I didn't sing, I was the original Munster Manila.
Oh, thank you. Great question, thank you. So if we have any more, we have time for maybe one or two more questions if there are any. One more over there, and then we'll wrap it up.
Hi, I was just curious when you guys were filming the Munsters, and you had a script, and you probably had to follow the script, if any of the characters ever would come up with funny lines and it would end up changing the script or the direction of the episode, or was it always very rigid in how it was written?
It was really very rigid, and I'll tell you why. Back in the day we were doing that, there was no videotape, it was all done on film, and it was expensive. So they wanted to get it right the first time or the second time, simply because of the cost of sending the film out and have it, what's what I'm looking for, have it,
Edited.
processed, they have it processed. So and then the special effects on the Munsters too, when we had breakaway walls and stuff like this, they wanted that not to have to be done again. So we rehearsed a lot, and when we did it, we adhered very much to the script, almost word for word. The word I was looking for was developed.
That was an excellent question, thank you. And let's have a big round of applause for Butch Patrick.
Thank you.
So happy he's here. Thank you. And also thank you all for coming today. We want to encourage you to get out there, and there's over 80 vendors, lots of chocolate, other foods and drinks. Please make sure, if you haven't already come over, see Butch Patrick at his table. And don't forget our friends Barry Williams, Mike Lookinland, Susan Olsen from the Brady Bunch. And have a great day. Thank you again, everybody, for coming.